Okay, all right. That's enough. Okay.
Jessica is muted.
Jessica,
Sorry, I muted you as well. I do beg your pardon. There you
Sorry
are.
for that.
No, you're back.
Sorry
No,
for that.
it's my
All
fault.
right.
Everybody.
All right, here we go. All right, so we'll do call and response for the two verses, and then all together for the last part. Narayanam namaskritya Narayanam namaskritya Naram chaiva narottamam Naram chaiva narottamam Devim sarasvatim vyasam Devim sarasvatim vyasam Tato jayam udirayat Tato jayam udirayat Nashtaprayeshvabhadreshu Nashtaprayeshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhāgavata sevaya Nityam Bhāgavata sevaya Bhagavati-uttama-shloke Bhagavati-uttama-shloke Bhaktir-bhavati naishtaki Bhaktir-bhavati naishtaki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya That's all I get in me for today, but maybe I'll plan a little flare for next time.
Flare as much as brightly as you care to, Jessica. Okay. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shivate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatadeshatarine Takanda Mandala Akaram Yena Yaptam Characharam Tat Padam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Chikapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priya. Apavitra pavitro va, sarvavasta gatopi va. Ya smaret pundarikaksham sa bhayabhyantara shuchi. Okay, we're going to do Brahma's story. You know, we should start with darshan, just just to be auspicious, even more auspicious than Jessica's kirtan. Krishna Balaram, have a nice darshan, everybody. This is Vrindavan Bhakti. Krishna, the cowherd boy. So Balaram is in that bhav, cows. We got St. Francis of Assisi snuck in there in the corner. Oh, we got some new additions now. We got Hanumanji. And he has to, and then of course Sitaram, because you got to have Sitaram as Ram. Sita. There we go. So now, with all of that wonderful darshan, we can jump to, I thought perhaps the tale of Brahma, the first yogi. So you might recall that Patanjali, in the very first verse, indicates that he's continuing a previous existing a set of teachings, because he says Anu. And now we have so many Sanskritists in the class. And Alice thought she was going to get away with it, but no. Any Sanskritists tell us what Anu does to a verb. That's what the first. Federico. Let's pick on Federico. The very first sutra of Patanjali is Atta Yoga Anu Shasana. Federico, what does Anu? Pietro can help if you want. What does Anu do to any verb it's tagged to?
It's an upasarga.
Upasarga.
Yeah. Anu Shasaman. Quello che, what's happening after? What comes after?
Yes, something like that, or it can mean the continuation of some activity, the ongoingness of an activity. So therefore, Anushasana means that Patanjali is not claiming he's coming up with a new set of teachings, but he's continuing. And therefore the question can arise, where is he continuing from? And so we've got in the Upanishads, we have we have in terms of the Shruti, which is the oldest part of in Sanskrit literature. We have Shruti and Smriti. So Shruti are the four Vedas, the Brahmana texts, the Aranyaka texts, and the Upanishad texts. And that's really the end of the Vedic, if you want to use the term Vedic strictly, Shruti, that which was heard. It was not composed. If it's eternal, then it's not composed. So the Shruti then is that which eternally is heard. And then the Upanishads there we have in the Kata, and in the Shvetashvatara, the Kata we have a reference to the whole Kata Upanishad at the end, death and Nachiketas. The Kata is a conversation between death and Nachiketas. And at the end, and it's basically Jnana Yoga teaching, the generic kind of, very, very much like chapter 2 of the Gita, soul is eternal, and, etc., etc. And at the end, though, and there's a very 3 or 4 verses, half a dozen, talking about yoga. It's a lovely, one of the lovely verses. Yoga is about the coming to be something and the ceasing to be. It sounds like an oxymoron, but but basically, pure consciousness comes to be, Svarupa Vastanam, and Vritti Sarupyam. I'm using Patanjalian language there, and absorption in the mind ceases to be. So anyway, but even that text, and then that Shveta says, Shveta says that Kapila, who was the founder of Sankhya, received the teachings from Shiva. So there's differing narratives about where did it all come from? Who was the first yogi? Where does yoga originate from? Okay, so we have the Shveta, which is Shiva, but the name Shiva isn't used in the Shveta, Shvetashvatara. The name Rudra is used in Hara. Don't confuse that with Hari. Hari is Vishnu and Krishna, and Hara is Shiva. So Hara, So Hara gives it to Kapila, who everyone, all traditions, Shaiva and Vaishnava agree with different narratives, but Kapila was clearly associated with the imparting of Sankhya. Remember, yoga was not a distinct school. That's a very new thing. Yoga was a subset of Sankhya. So, I'm going to sit up here. So that's one narrative of the origin of yoga. And then in the Gita, Krishna says, in chapter 4, there were two kinds of yoga right at the beginning, and one of them got lost. Two kinds of yoga, one of them got lost. There was the Patanjalian yoga. He said, I gave them to him in the beginning. He said, I gave it to Vivishwan, who is a celestial, associated with the sun. Some of you may have heard of the Surya Namaskar, which, by the way, it's not very Vedic. It was invented by the Maharaj of Baroda in early 1900s. The Surya Namaskar, we think it's a pristine Vedic, asana that dropped out of the heavens, but really it was put together by Maharaj of Mysore, not Mysore, Baroda. In those days, the British gymnastics was doing, was kind of popular. That's kind of how yoga came about, by the way, as a nationalist alternative to British physical culture. But you look at the photo of Maharaj, little Maharaj of Baroda. He's all built. He's a little guy, but he was also part of that nationalist sort of movement to find an alternative. So that was the Surya Namaskar, origins of that. But anyway, so the different narratives about the origin of yoga, which is related to what we're going to do today, story of Brahma. So there is the Shweta, which says Shiva gave it to Kapila. It just says that. It doesn't say Shiva's the that Shiva was the ultimate source. But obviously a Shaiva would take that story to indicate that Shiva was the ultimate source. Then we have the Gita, where Krishna says, I gave it to Vivishwan in the beginning, two types of yoga. And in the course of time, yoga nashta parantapa, sa kalena ha mahata, yoga nashta, karma yoga, out of the two, karma yoga got lost. So only Patanjali and Forest, you call it, the texts call it dhyana. The Gita calls it Sankhya, doesn't recognize it as separate. So that when Arjuna was on the battlefield and Krishna is giving the Gita, there was only, we will call it Patanjalian yoga, but that's our term. The texts don't call it that because they don't see Patanjali as the originator. So texts call it dhyana, dhyana yoga. Typically, Krishna calls it Sankhya yoga in the Gita. It's meditational, fixing of the mind kind of yoga. That's the terms that are most often used. Sometimes even Jnana yoga, but Sankhya. So that's the second sort of story of origin. So Kapila, and we'll do the Kapila story in the Bhāgavatam at some point. It's very Sankhya dense, but we should do some dense philosophy at some point in our never-ending Svādhyāya till death do us part. Bhāgavata Svādhyāya. Okay, so then the other story is Hiranyagarbha, which is the one the Yoga Sutra commentaries refer to. The Yoga Sutra commentaries, and I think it's at the first verse, say Hiranyagarbha was the, and who is Hiranyagarbha? Hiranyagarbha, the golden egg. And he is the first being. He's not Ishvara. He's called Ishvara, but he's not Ishvara like Shiva and Vishnu are. They're eternal. There's Shiva up there. So they're not like that. Brahma is a jiva like us. And he's embodied like us. And he's karmically trapped like us. And at the end of a cosmic cycle, the being with the best karma from the previous cycle gets manifest as Brahma. It's the most powerful role in the universe. He has a form made of pure buddhi. He has a prakritic body, but it's made of pure buddhi. So that indicates he's pure intelligence, because he has to He's given the blueprint, of course, by Vishnu. He's not the creator of Prakriti. He's not the Maha creator, but he's the engineer. Vishnu doesn't do all the technical stuff. So I prefer to think of him as an engineer. So then he manifests all the forms of the living beings. Okay, and he's considered the first yogi. So you got these three different, and we're going to look at his story. Hiranyagarbha is the name for Brahma, not to be confused with Brahman. Neuter noun, which is the absolute truth. This is a masculine noun. Our Sanskritists will know. Unending stems in the nominative singular masculine become long a, so become Brahma. So he's Brahma, and how do you recognize him? Well, he's the being with four heads. So you see him often up in the sky, or whatever. He's sitting on a lotus. His consort is Sarasvati, and he rides a swan. So that's how you might recognize Brahma. Okay, and he's the first yogi according to the story we're going to look today. They're like the very, very, very first yogi. And here, let's see what that looks like. Sorry. Why is it doing that? Oh, share. What am I going to share? Hang on. It's not coming up. That's weird.
You are sharing.
You can see this? Can you see it?
Yeah, book 2, chapter 5.
So we are book 2, chapter 5. So Narad, okay, do everybody know who Narad says? He's like this, he's one of the 12 great ever-enlightened Mahajans, great sages, who remain in the sort of our universe, and they are, obviously they have all the mystic powers. So he travels around the universe, he has the siddhi that he can manifest anywhere, it's by will. And he's often, you'll see him in Indian art up in the sky, typically, to indicate that he just sort of manifests through the airwaves. And he carries a veena. He wears the cloth of a renunciate. So, typically he would be wearing saffron. He's got a top knot to underscore further underscore, right? Saffron plus the top knot, that he's a renunciate. And he carries the veena, 4-string thing. Instrument. So Narada said, homage to you, Brahma. And there's 2 stories. And they're slightly different, even within the same Bhāgavata. Well, we'll read both of them. Okay, so there's 2 of them. So there's book 2, okay, then book 2, chapter 9. Then there's another one here, book 3. So we'll read both stories of Narada and why is he identified as the first yogi? So homage to you, Lord of the Celestials. He is the primary celestial, obviously. He's not a warrior like Indra is the sort of war lord of the celestial, Indra, which will be, culturally cognate with Thor and Zeus. And very interesting. Indra has a thunderbolt. Thor has a hammer, right? Zeus, does he not use lightning? Does he not have a thunderbolt? Somebody can... Maybe Nina would know that answer to that. So these are all cognates. So Indra is the war chieftain, but the real sort of grand, celestial of them all is Brahma. You're the firstborn being. There you go. But he's born. Ishvara is never born. Aja, no birth. Ajanma, Aja, reduced word compound. And the progenitor of all other beings that somebody has to, right? Vishnu's gonna, Vishnu's too God on high to be, fooling around like some kind of a mechanical engineer. So that's the Dharma of Brahma. Kindly explain to me the knowledge through which the Atman is revealed. And obviously Narad knows that because he knows his own Atman. He's setting up the stage for us. Please disclose the truth about this material reality, Prakriti. What is its form? What is its support? What is it created, O Master? And what is it resting? What is beyond it? If he'd been born today, he'd say, well, what triggered the Big Bang? What came before? What's outside of the Big Bang? He might have added that to the list of questions. After all, your lordship knows everything past, present, and future. That's a fairly typical way of sort of greeting a sage. You know everything, but and you know the answer of all things. Still, I'm asking you, like that. After all, you know everything. You know this universe through direct realization, as if it were an almanac of fruit in the palm of your hand. Clearly, he's created. He's the secondary creator. Vishnu creates the actual universe and Prakriti, but once that's done, then Brahma is born within it, and he takes care of all the forms within it. Through your own Maya power. And after this, we'll read a Krishna story. We'll read these two stories of Brahma, the first yogi, and then we'll jump to, because we want to interject some Krishna Leela, and then we'll read the story of Brahma when he tries to outwit, he's not sure who Krishna is. He knows who Vishnu is, and he goes down to Vrindavan, and this little boy is crawling around in the sand. He can't even stand up on his feet. And he's told that is Vishnu, and he's like, wait a minute, how can that be Vishnu? Vishnu's God on high. So he decides to test him. So after we've done with this sort of Brahma as the first yogi, we'll have a look at that Leela, that little story, which is so delightful. It's one of my favorites. Okay. Right. Through your own Maya power, and he tries to outwit Krishna with his Maya power. In the story I just referred to, the Leela, it's called Leela. These are the stories associated with Krishna. Each little episode is a Leela, like a chapter in a book, or an episode in a drama. They're called Leelas. And he exerts his Maya, and then he says he was completely. And remember, he's the most intelligent being in the universe. So the point is, there's no way through intelligence we can understand God. He gets so confounded, and it says his Maya power. I don't want to give away the storyline, but his Maya, when it came in contact with Vishnu's Maya, he said it was like a puppet in front of the deity in the temple, in front of the goddess herself. That's how insignificant his power was. But he has the power to create all the forms in the universe. That's pretty damn powerful. So through your own Maya power, you alone create the embodied living beings by means of the physical elements, meaning he creates the forms. So here's the question. But what is beyond you? What is your support? What is your true nature? And what is the source of your perception? Where do you get your Shakti from? What empowers you to create? And of course, you have to stop that causal line of questioning somewhere, right? Well, what's your cause, or what's your cause, or what's the cause of that cause, and what's the cause of that cause? And at some point, you have to have a stop sign, of course, and that's Vishnu. And that's why so often in the text, it says Vishnu, cause of all causes, Krishna, cause of all causes. In the Krishna tradition, Krishna is even the cause of Vishnu. He's the supreme cause of all causes. So when you talk about the cause of all causes, that's your stop sign. You can't say, well, who's the cause of all causes? Because by definition, the cause of all causes is the cause of all causes. There's not some other cause that causes that, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be the cause of all causes. All of these terms are loaded with a signification. So, all right, like a spider, you create those beings without fatigue. But you yourself are not created by anyone else. You rest on your own potency. It's not quite true, because his form is also a form of Prakriti, but Narada must be meaning, well, let's see what he means. I do not know from where anything that has form and is nameable can be created, O Master. Right? If it has a form, you can name it. Anything that has a form means it has a form different from some other form. Otherwise, it would just be monistic. There'd just be, a universal energy with no form, no qualities, which, of course, is the goal of Dvaita Vedanta. There's two kinds of monism. Monism means only one. There's spiritual monism, like Advaita Vedanta, where everything is simply Brahman, and in Advaita Vedanta is an extreme form of that, because the world of name and form is illusory. Never existed in the first place. And then, of course, Shankara has the challenge of explaining, well, where does illusion come from? So there's that spiritual monism, mono, one, and then amongst certain philosophers, there's material monism, that everything is just matter, including consciousness, as some sort of epiphenomenon of matter. So sometimes we have to be careful when we use the term monism in Indian philosophy. Everybody knows what we're talking about. We're talking about Advaita Vedanta and some forms of Shakta traditions, but let's not. They're different from Advaita, but they're still monistic. But when you talk to Western philosophers, you have to be careful, because when they hear the term monism, they might very well be thinking of material monism. So just a little point there. So anyway, like a spider, you create those beings that right. I do not know from where else anything that has form and is nameable can be created. So to finish that point, if something has a form, and it's, obviously material monism has no form because it's infinite, and Advaita Vedanta has no form because it's infinite. So anything with a form is located, and if it has a form, it's going to be different from the form next door. Meaning my table has a form and it's different from the chair beside it. So anything that has a form, then you identify it, then you can make up a name for it. So it's nameable. And this is Nama Rupa, a famous couplet from the Upanishads, and also a magazine put together by one of Vishnu Devananda's, the Shivananda guru, Vishnu Devananda's, one of his disciples, has put together a very, very high quality, I don't know if it's still running, but very high quality Nama Rupa. It's very high quality sort of yoga magazine, but really focused on philosophy and real kind of, he was a sannyasi actually, and then he got married, but he was a real genuine, sadhaka. So he wasn't going to have any kind of like commodified yoga stuff. So it's a really good, solid, grounded in Indian tradition and various traditions magazine. It's called Nama Rupa, and this is the Nama Rupa, right? If you have a Rupa means a form, then Nama, you can apply a name to it. So it's just another way of referring to the material world. You can just say the Nama Rupa, the realm, or the sort of perception of Nama Rupa is another way of talking about Prakriti, right? So I don't know where anything else can be created, whether it's an entity is high or low, gross or subtle, or in between. He's saying, Narada seems to be saying, that maybe Brahmā is the ultimate cause. He knows very well he isn't, but he's just sort of setting this up for us. He said, I don't know what else is there. Okay. But then he realized, well, it can't be Brahmā. He says, but yet you undertook that tapas with extremely concentrated mind. Ringing a bell, ding, 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 ding. What's the first thing you do in Kriya Yoga? You want to be a yogi? Tapaha, Svādhyāya, Ishvara Pranidhana, Kriya Yoga. So if you're doing tapas, how can you be the cause of all causes? What cause of all causes wouldn't be doing tapas? That means you're concentrating your mind to get the power to do something. Well, where did the power come from? If you have to do tapas, you can't be the ultimate causal entity. So he says like that. But yet, you undertook that severe tapas, and that's why he's the first yogi. But we'll read the story. Because what is a yogi? The first thing the yogi does, chapter 2, Patanjali, tapas. That word alone identifies classical, well, all kinds of yoga, even karma yoga, but especially Patanjali yoga. You undertook severe austerity with extremely concentrated mind. What is that? Samadhi, samadhitaha. Your mind is not just concentrated, that might be dharana or dhyana, right? Stages 6 and 7. Extremely, that would be samadhi. So he says, because of that, you confuse us. You raise a great doubt in our minds as to whether you are, in fact, the supreme being. Because people think, well, Brahmā, he's the creator, right? Typically, when you think of God, right, in Christianity or Islam or any theistic tradition, what's the first thing that comes to mind? When we think of God, we think of God the creator. because you infer from creation, that there must be a creator. If something is created, then it is created by a creator. So that's even a rational inference. You don't need a scripture to tell you that. Something a product, to use that, let's use the framing of Nyaya, the theists, the logicians, they would say anything that's made of parts is a product. It's made of parts. Someone put the parts together. Whether you want to go with the subatomic particles of physics and the gravitational and the four forces, whatever you want to go with, someone's put it together. It can't just be put together by itself. They would find, materialism is such, its sense makes no sense. So if something is a product, it needs to have a producer. So that's how the theistic mind makes this inference and says there must be somebody who put the parts together. There must be someone who did that. Okay, so then we infer there's a creator. And then we use the word omnipotent because if you put together the universe, all we know is the universe. So therefore, whoever put the bits of the universe together has its supreme universal power. You have to have the power to do it, and you also have to know what you're putting together. If you produce something, like you're going in the kitchen, you're making dinner, and you're putting in your spices and your bits and pieces, you have to know exactly what you're putting in. So if you're creating a universe, you have to know every single subatomic particle. Well, how about that? How about we call that omniscience then? So therefore, traditions very typically use these two terms, omniscience and omnipotence, to describe that being that created the universe. And Narada is saying, well, hang on a minute, it can't be you, Brahmā, right? You raise a great doubt, right? Because he did tapas. And if he did tapas, then what power is he channeling? There must be some power that he doesn't have, that he's not omnipotent after all. If you're omnipotent, you don't have to do tapas. The yogis have to do tapas to get their siddhis. But if you're omnipotent, you just do an act of will. So anyone doing tapas can't be the supreme being. That's the point he's making. Oh, omniscient Lord of everything. What does he mean by that? You know everything within Prakriti. So you're omniscio. You know everything, in terms of our known reality, which is with the Prakritic one, expanding universe and everything like that. He probably, if nowadays he might say, what dark matter really is, whether there are multiverses or not, whether the string theory is valid or not. He'd know all of that if he was right, but only within the universe. So kindly explain everything that I have asked about so that I may understand by your instruction. Okay, so Narada is putting this, even though Narada knows everything. Brahma said, this inquiry of yours could not be better, O son, because I think Narada manifests from Brahma's. I don't know. Would you be kind enough to go into Wiki? Narada emanating from Brahma's third eye or something? Remember, don't be surprised if there's different narratives and different traditions. It's just the way it is. These traditions have come down thousands of years. And naturally, there's going to be differences between them. I mean, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John couldn't even get it together to be consistent. And that was only 70 years after Christ. What to speak traditions that have been handed down.
It says from the mind of Brahma.
Brahma. So there he calls him son. So, O son, you're blessing me, since I am now inspired to explain the glories of Bhagavan. You're all blessing me, all you are blessing me, because by your interest in the Bhagavata, I'm blessed that I get to discuss the Bhagavatam with you. Okay, so that's the mind of a bhakta. Any opportunity to speak about Bhagavan is a blessing, and therefore I honor you all, and especially we have to honor Alice, who, it's not like she doesn't have anything else to do. She's got lots of stuff to do. And she's including like reminding me every 35 minutes that the class is coming up. Okay. Notice I spared you, Alice, from the long A unending. Ha ha ha. Okay, now. All right. What you've said is correct, my child. Since your knowledge about me is limited, you do not know he who is greater than I. I do illuminate the universe, right? Because he's the secondary creator. That's how I think. I sometimes call him secondary creator. Secondary, why? Because Vishnu is actually Prakriti herself is a Shakti of Vishnu. In the Gita, Krishna says, Devi hi esha gunamayi mama maya. This is my Maya, made of the three gunas. Maya is nothing other than the three gunas, and Prakriti is nothing other than the three gunas. So therefore, this Krishna says it's divine. Devi hi esha. This guna mayi mama maya. This Maya of mine, which consists of the three gunas. Don't think of Maya as something other than the three gunas. It's nothing other than the three gunas. Don't think Maya is some other category of ontological category. It isn't. It's the three gunas themselves. Otherwise, where is Maya on the Sankhya chart? No Maya on the Sankhya chart. There's Prakriti, Buddhi, Mana, right? Ahankara, and then you get the Karamindriyas, Gyanindriyas, and then you get the subtle elements. And the Mahabhutas, no Maya, separate. It is the gunas themselves. That is Maya. All of that is Maya. Okay. Now, so I do illuminate the universe. It's true, says Brahmā, verse 11. Let's make this a bit bigger. But it has already been illuminated by his effulgence. Just as the sun, fire, the moon, the constellations, the planets, and the stars, they're all illuminated by him. So illumination itself comes from Bhagavan. Eleanor, remind me we got to put this up on the website, this story. I should have thought about it earlier. People with less intelligence, who are bewildered by that very Maya of Vishnu, they think in terms of I and my. Aham mama iti, ahamkara, right? Aham means I, asmi means I am. In Patanjali calls it asmita, the state of I amness, that state of I amness, which Patanjali calls asmita because he's talking about the mind. Let's take a moment now. Asmi is a cognitive, psychological state. I amness is in your mind. Ahamkara is you're doing with your body state. And because the Gita is interested in action, karma, yoga, then it uses the term ahamkar. Who is the doer of karma? Well, the kartra. So ahamkar, I, ahamkar, I do. So Gita is interested in action in the world, doing. Whereas Patanjali is not interested in doing, no doing, nirodha doing. And what's Patanjali interested in? Who are you? And beyond the mind, who is the asmi? Who is the I am? So he calls it asmita. So while the two terms mean the same thing, they are stressing different aspects of this ego, false ego. It's false. You do have a real ego. There's a real asmi, which the Upanishads call Brahmasmi. I'm Brahman. Brahmosmi, actually. Is it? What is it? Brahmasmi.
Aham Brahmasmi.
Yeah. And Tattvamasi, and you are too. So therefore, there is an asmi, which is the Atman. There is a self. There is an I. But it isn't the I that we identify with in Maya. In Maya, it's called asmita, which is, Patanjali says, drashtra drishyayoho samyoga, to think that the seer and the instruments of sight are the same. The body, the mind are instruments of sight. They're not the real, and what's the seer is consciousness. But to think that seer, which is another term for Atman, to think the Atman is the instruments of sight, that is a mental illness, the delusion. So he calls it asmita because he's interested in the mind, the cognitive state, because the Patanjali Yoga Sutra is all about the mind, chitta, and because the Gita is very much about action. He uses the word kar, which is to do, karma, hankara. Is that clear? Okay, it's important, we can always take little detours in order to establish these other kinds of larger points. I think they might be of interest to us. Right, now, where are we? Yeah, they're all illuminated by him, verse 11. Reverence to Bhagavan Vasudeva, right, which is what we did, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So that's why we're using that mantra, is because we're studying the Bhāgavata Purāṇa. So notice how immediately he starts off. He's going to answer the question. And he starts off just as we did. And he's going to start off with doing Namaha to Vasudeva. So what we are doing is the traditional way of beginning any kind of study, or in his case, instruction. We first honor our Bhagavan, because otherwise we have no Shakti to do anything. And we become trapped by our asmita. And we don't want that. We want the teachings to shine through. We have to be transparent. The minute our ego gets in the way, it blocks. It blocks that transmission, and that transmission, it comes out tainted by the egos. We don't want that. If we really want to transmit, our dharma is to be free of, do everything we can, struggle to be free of this ego, which is like a bad smell that follows us everywhere, like a ghost. It's like a ghost in the mind. It is because of his insurmountable Maya illusion, right? And we had the verse, somebody I think put it in the chat, Devi hi yasha guna mayi. Because of Maya that people call me the guru of the world, says Brahmā. See how humble he is? We should never think of ourselves as teachers, actually. Even just saying we're teachers is asmita. We're all students. We do Svādhyāya. We're all students. Otherwise, you get trapped in this nonsense. Guru, I'm a teacher, and then we create distance and all this nonsense. So it's because of illusion that people call me guru of the world. But the fact is that I myself meditate on him. Is Brahma's spiritual secret. He's always meditating on Vishnu. But we're going to get to the story of the first yoga. We're just setting it up. People with less intelligence who are bewildered by that Maya, we skipped a verse. Think in terms of I and mine. It's called aham mama iti. It becomes aham mameti. It's a standard phrase in Vedanta. Aham, like ahamkara. Mama. What's mama? Where's our Sanskritist? What's mama? And it's not Italian mama.
Genitive from
Me.
Genitive singular, of me. It's the genitive possessor. Aham mama. So I and mine. When nothing is ours. It's all Prakriti, belongs to Vishnu. And the hum that we think we are is the false one. So people that are less intelligence, that's me and you, my friends. Or at least me. Maybe some of you, I don't know. Less intelligence. We're bewildered by that Maya, which means the three gunas, and we think in terms of aham mama. But Maya herself is ashamed of presenting herself before Vishnu. Even though she has her dharma as her dharma, it's a job, that she covers us according to our desires. She covers us according to our desires. So if we have sattvic desires and we seek, Atman, or we seek, some level of purity, it's still a bond, by the way, sattva. Krishna calls it a bond. He says, those in sattva are bound by happiness and contentment and knowledge. So sattva doesn't necessarily mean only seeking the Atman. And rajas is another kind of covering where we're just insatiable desires. Insatiable. You can't even sit still. Even you're in the middle of satisfying a desire, you're thinking of the next one. That's rajas. And if you sit still, you think there's something wrong. You feel guilty. I'm expert in Rajaguna. I am your guru. I will claim the title of guru for the Rajaguna because I'm completely rajasic. But And then tamas is just, is just sort of lethargy, depression. So Maya covers everyone according to their desires. So we are ultimately the cause of the nature of our own covering by Maya, according to our desire. Desire Bhagavan, everything changes. Then Maya slowly backs away. And the more we demonstrate our sincerity, our humility, our surrender, Maya slowly pulls away. She's ashamed. We just read the verse. Why? Because she has to cover we're all Vishnu's ankshas. We're all little sparks of Vishnu. And her job is to cover us. So she doesn't have a very nice job. And of course, she's apologetic. But of course, Vishnu's telling her to do that. She's a form of Shakti. Durga is Maya. Durga means prison. So Durga is Maya. You can think of Durga as Maya. And that's her job. I mean, somebody has to do things, unpleasant jobs. Like if you're on trial, someone has to be the defendant, even if it's even if somebody is a serial killer and most awful human being, somebody has the dharma of being a defense lawyer. So that's just the dharma of that person. Maya has this dharma which she's ashamed about in this verse here. Look. Here, Maya herself is ashamed of presenting herself before Vishnu, upon whom Brahma meditates. There's no other thing in reality apart from Vasudeva. Who knows the verse? Bhagavad Gita. Vasudeva sarvam iti. Sa mahatma sudurlabha. A person who realizes Bahunam janmanam ante. After many births, Bahunam janmanam ante, at the end of many births, Jnanavan, right? Sanskrit is van, possessive, possessive like Bhagavan. Jnanavan, the possessor of knowledge. Bahunam, genitive plural, Federico. Bahunam janmanam ante, Jnanavan, one possessing jnana. But Jnanavam mam prapadyante, surrenders to me. Vasudeva sarvamiti. Saying this, Vasudeva is everything. Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. That's a great soul who is very rare. So to know that Bhagavan, and it's the same word, Vasudeva, which is the name of Krishna, not Vasudeva, Vasudeva, Sarvam. Like Sarvam Dukam, everything. Why is everything? Because Prakriti is Vasudeva. Everything's Maya is Vasudeva, a Shakti. Okay? And so here it is. We're going to make connections with Gita and Yoga Sutras because all of this is all coming from the same Vaishnava, devotional, theistic aspect of Hinduism, which is supremely dominant in the subcontinent. Okay, so there is no other reality, no other thing in reality apart from Vasudeva, Brahmana. Vasudeva is everything, whether in the form of substance, activity, time, nature, or soul. Right? Substance is what? Prakriti. Activity is what? Movement of Prakriti. Time is what? Same thing. Movement of Prakriti. Nature is what? Prakriti. And what's the soul? That is also the anksha of Vishnu, which means like a spark. Right? They're not Advaita Vedanta. This is not Advaita Vedanta. So the Atmans are eternal, individual, ankshas. So there's nothing, all of that is Vasudeva. The celestials are born from Narayana's body. The Vedas accept Narayana as the supreme. The various worlds accept Narayana as supreme. Ritual sacrifices offered to Narayana as supreme. In one of the Brahmanas, Taittiriya Brahmana, Vishnu is the receiver of the yagnas. All of these are references to statements in the text. Yoga is dedicated to Narayana Supreme. It's probably got a Patanjali's Ishvara Pranidhana in mind. Ishvara Pranidhana. Tapas is devoted to Narayana Supreme. You do tapas, fix your mind on Narayana. Knowledge accepts Narayana Supreme. And the final desolation of life is Narayana Supreme. So Brahma is saying everything is Narayana, Vishnu, Vasudeva, Krishna. Okay? I myself are created by him. And then, directed by his glance, Vishnu just glances, create the creation. Vishnu's glance at there's cosmic cycles. This is the argument of Vedanta against Sankhya, because they both accept the creative cycles. And Vedanta is going to say, Brahman, the definition of Brahman, Janmadi yasya yataha. Brahman is that from which the creation, maintenance, and dissolution come from him, but cyclically. So Vedanta says there must be a Brahman underneath it all. Sankhya says, no, we don't need Brahman. It's not all Sankhya, but there's one particular atheistic school. There's an Astika and a Nastika. There is one school of Sankhya that's Astika. Asti means that there is a God. Asti, there is. Asti, Sanskrit is. Us, strong form, third person, Uttama Purusha, Ekavachanam, Asti. And then the other school is Nasti, Naasti. There isn't God. No, there isn't. Naasti. So there are the two schools. And then the Nastika Sankhya, they say we don't need a God, right? But they accept the cyclicality. And so Vedanta says, okay, then who triggers the gunas at the beginning of the next cycle? What triggers it? They would say exactly the same thing about Big Bang. Think of the beginning of the cycle as Big Bang. Who triggers it? If the trigger is internal, it would always be triggering. There would be no cycles. Because something is internal, like the light of the sun, it's always there. Not that it's suddenly someone lit a match and then the sun became luminous. So if luminosity is a quality of the sun, it's inherent in the sun. It's always there. So therefore, what triggers, if the trigger is hidden within, why does it suddenly trigger at that moment? And if the trigger is without, Vedanta says, well, that's what we say. We say you need an outside trigger to kickstart it. And what is that? Is the glance of Vishnu, which is what we're looking at in this verse. It's just Vishnu glances. He doesn't even need to glance. He could just like an act of will, but they say glances. Is that clear? Do you see how that works with the Big Bang? If there was an infinitely dense moment, 14 billion, 13.8 billion years ago, all matter's condensed into some just completely just weird to even think about that. But let's go with that. And then all of a sudden it's banged. Some physicist came up with that verb. What made it bang then? This is what Indian philosophy does. It tries to catch you on the horns of a dilemma. It's what the Greeks call the horns of a dilemma. Either this or that. If you do this, you got a problem. If you do that, you've got a problem. Therefore, your position is incoherent. I'll say that again. When you're the opposing point of view, if you're a good debater, you take the opponent's own view. And you say, okay, according to your view, either this or that, and nothing else. So let's go with the Big Bang. The trigger that triggered the Big Bang is either inside that infinitely dense moment or it's outside. If you say it's inside, then what's the problem? Well, it would always be banging. Why did it bang just at that moment? What was the cause of that? Right? Your opponent has no answer to that. You just said something like it was. If you say it's outside, then the theist would say, well, that's what we say. Got that? Did you all get that? What am I really doing with this? I'm showing how the ancient Sankhya arguments and Vedanta arguments are still relevant in our day and age. When you trim it right down to the essential details, those arguments are still relevant to our day and age. They're not some antiquarian, outdated. You might have to strip away some of the surface stuff, but the essential arguments where you think they didn't think about this stuff intensely from what. So there's the argument. Okay, so where are we? And then directed by his glance, then Prakriti gets triggered, and then he says, then I then I go inside that activated, what is activated actually the Rajaguna, because any action is Rajas. Then directed by his glance, I create the creation. So he is the seer, Drashtra. We're tiny little seers, the Drashtra. He sees everything. He's the omniscient, supreme. Have you ever wondered And I know some of you really study the Yoga Sutras. Have you ever wondered, why does Patanjali say his omniscience is unsurpassed? Omniscience, you don't need to, if something's omniscience, why do you need to say unsurpassed? It means you know everything. Why do you need to qualify that any further? You just say he's omniscient. You don't need to add stuff to that. Omniscient means omni. If something's omni, well, you don't have to start qualifying omni. Well, how about this? What if the yogi knows everything within the universe? So he knows he's omni, but Vishnu's is unsurpassed because he's beyond the universe, and plus he knows infinite universes, not just one little tiny. One of the siddhis, take it or leave it, one of the siddhis is Patanjali's. You can know every subatomic particle in the universe. Meaning your mind, when you really free it from ahankara and asmita, it's like light. There's nothing stopping it. It can pervade. Light can pervade the universe if there were no boundaries and atmospheres. That's why we talk about the light of the Big Bang. So the universe is, the yogi's consciousness is potentially, our consciousness is potentially that it's now limited, body, mind. But then it stops at the boundaries of the universe. They are boundaries, by the way, in Vedic cosmography. It's not that the universe will expand infinitely, right? Physicists are not sure. Is it speeding up? Is it not speeding up? I mean, that's a discussion that's going on. But so why does it say Ishvara's omniscience is unsurpassed? Because there are other omnisciences, that of the yogi, but that's not Vishnu's omniscience. It's on a completely different level than the ability of the yogi's consciousness to pervade the universe, then stop at the boundaries of the universe. So we can call them omniscient, the yogis, because they know everything that we know, which is this universe. But Vishnu is another category altogether, completely beyond that. I hope that makes some sense. So it certainly makes sense.
You've been recording, just so you know.
Oh, okay. So we have to stop share. And we have to, friends, let's keep reading, see if we can do a couple of chapters. I mean, we have to, I think it's important, that we take these detours. Every single thing in the text has a meaning. It's referring to something. We don't want to just read it and then say, oh, well, we did this chapter and that. We want to go deep into the mind of Vyasa. Obviously, we can't have no access to his mind, but at least we want to go deep into the text and unpack everything that we are aware of. Unpack it, do it properly. Do a real traditional Svādhyāya. Thanks to our teachers who showed us what a real Svādhyāya looks like. And of course, you study this with a real Shastri. They could spend days on one verse. I'm doing what I just doing, unpacking everything and connecting it. If the real Pandits are still a few around. Okay, although he is transcendent. Okay, hang on. He's the seer, the Lord, the highest truth, and the Atman of all, right? So he's the Paramatman, which pervades all little Atmans. He pervades us. Although he's transcendent to the gunas, right? Because Devi Asha Guna Mai Mama Mai transcends his Shaktis. By his Maya potency, he has adopted the forms of the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Okay, so that's his Maya. And why does he do that? For the purpose of maintenance, creation, and destruction. That's the first verse of it, second verse of Sutra Vedanta Sutra. What is Brahman? Janma Adi, maintenance, creation, etc. What is etc.? Creation, maintenance, and dissolution. That is the definition of Brahman. You want a definition of Brahman? We know the definition of yoga. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. What's the definition of Brahman? Janma Adi Yasya Yataha. The one from whom, Yataha, from whom, right? Pietro, yataha, tataha, yataha, from whom, ablative, yataha, from whom, janma adi, creation, etc. It's so well known, creation, maintenance, and destruction, you don't have to list them all. You just have to say creation, etc. Everybody knows what the other etc. is. So that's Vishnu. So, the gunas, which are the basis of material substances, right? Because that is the stuffness, right? Subatomic, whatever you want to call it, subatomic particles, we would say subatomic particles and forces. they would say Mahabhutas and Tanmatras. Mahabhutas, by the way, are subatomic particles. And Tanmatras, you could probably think of them as forces or vibrational qualities. So, at some point there might be some rough overlap with, by the way, there's the Bhaktivedanta Institute, which is it's actually becoming quite sophisticated. I'm impressed. And the Bhaktivedanta Institute in Florida, if you go on their website, they have real, professional physicists and professional, PhDs, serious thinkers that are not just, trying to force Bhagavatam, metaphysics, just force it into physics. That's really annoying when you try to do that because you disrespect both traditions. You try to force two models of reality, physics as we know, as is known in the academy, and metaphysics is sunk, and you try to force it and say, you hear people say, we had this in the Vedas all along. That can be really annoying. It's most especially annoying to actual physicists. But the Bhaktivedanta Institute have actually really I guess folks associated with it that are really interested in having these conversations between modern physics and Sankhya metaphysics. And I'm actually, I was a little dubious about it all, but some of them are actually real scholars, and they're not taking liberties, and and they know their stuff. So if you're interested, you could check out I don't know what the website, just Bhaktivedanta Institute in Florida, and then they have courses you can upload for free or download for free. Check them out. Maybe some of them are better than others. I can't say. Some of them are probably a bit flaky, but there is some good stuff there too. So if any of you are interested in science and this sort of interface, which of course we have to be at some point. I mean, the ancient traditions never ran away from their intellectual challenges. The Vedanta never ran away from the Buddhists, from the Buddhist challenge, or the Charvaka, the materialist challenge. They never ran away from it. They engaged it. So modern day Vedantins and yogins have to do that. We can't live in a bubble. Our Purva Paksha, opposing point of view, is physics and consciousness studies. Specifically the materialistic models of consciousness. That's our Purva Paksha. That's our opposing point of view. So if we're going to perpetuate these traditions, then our dharma is to, at some point, start finding ways of communicating, and either refuting with sound, rational arguments of opposing points of view, or recognizing commonality. So it has to happen. I mean, it's only been, the 60s really. I know Vivekananda came over late 19th century, but, the real sort of transplantation of Hinduism was in the 60s, counterculture. So it's been, a little bit more than half a century, but it's time now. And, there was all hippies back then, but now you got in the 60s, but now you have serious physicists and serious psychologists and people serious about their disciplines who also happen to be serious about yoga metaphysics. So, I have great hope for the immediate future. I mean, in our lifetime, I have hope that we're going to see some interesting discussions, and you might want to check out the BI as one place to see what's going on, at least with that center. Okay. Now, the gunas are the basis of material substances of knowledge, where knowledge is a state of mind. What is knowledge? It's samskaras in the mind that accurately represent external reality. That's knowledge, to know, right? Pramana, how do you know? Patanjali, you know by pratyaksha, anumana, and shabda. You know things from sense perception, from inferences. I mean, you're being and you're told things. And what's the definition? That it accurately reflects, what's real outside. So, but what is it all? That's both. What's real outside is prakriti, and your mind is prakriti, and the samskaras are prakriti, and knowledge systems are prakriti. So therefore, the gunas are not just the basis of material substance; it's the basis of knowledge itself, because knowledge is nothing other than imprints in subtle prakriti, imprints of gross prakriti in subtle prakriti. That's it. But right, knowledge is the state of mind. That's prakriti, And what is right? Samskaras, these are like bubbles, they're like little sort of little subtle atoms, subatomic particles. There's gross subatomic particles, but there's subtle ones in the mind. We call them samskaras, they're little imprints. I think of them as subtle little subatomic particles. Action, what's action? The body, right? The karmendriyas are the organs of action, that prakriti. And what are we acting in? The world out there. What's that? Prakriti. So all of this is the gunas. So he has adopted the gunas for the purpose of maintenance, creation, and destruction. Oh, we did that already. The gunas are the basis of substances, knowledge, action, and they continually bind the Purusha, cause, effect, and agency. We are agents. We have free will. And as we act free will, we act. The action is a cause, and it creates the effect. That's karma, is nothing other than cause and effect. All of it. And we're bound by it. And, as long as we desire to enjoy, separate from, according to the Bhāgavatam, separate from Bhagavan. We desire to enjoy separate from God, actually. That's the theist position. It's not just, otherwise, it's kind of like a turning the back on Bhagavan. It's actually, in some ways, the theistic, which are the dominant traditions in India, are actually closer to the Old Testament than they are to Advaita Vedanta. It's a turning away from God. Very interesting. Maybe we'll talk about that sometime. But we never fell. There's a big debate. How do we end up here in the first place? You're never going to get an answer to that, my friends. So we're bound, although we are free, the Purusha is free, but because of agency, free will, agency means free will. I'm an agent. The Purusha is the agent. And so the agent acts, and the minute there's action, then one's connected to Prakriti, and what Prakriti is nothing other than cause and effect. Action then translates into the mind as desire, as intention, and then action, and all of that then is in the realm of Prakriti, and then the very nature of Prakriti is set up so every movement in it has a counter reaction. Every ripple, every action has a reaction. So then we're trapped by that. But why are we free? Because we're agents. Although he is free, with pure consciousness, plus we can change what we do with our agency. We can seek Bhagavan instead of seeking separation from Brahman. And the minute we're separate from Brahman, then where are we? Here in the material world, in the material body. Where else are we going to be? Or you could be in a middle space of jnana. Infinite, eternal, like Advaita Vedanta. Pure consciousness, infinite, eternal. Which we'll talk about another time. So basically 3 options. Prakriti, infinite, impersonal, formless existence, Satchidananda, or this sort of relationship with God in the divine realm, made of pure spirit, pure consciousness. At that point, you're starting to sound like a Christian, which makes sense. Why would it be different? Other than in massive detail, but basic essence is that. The gunas which are okay, we did that. He, Bhagavan, Adhokshara, Lord Vishnu, is imperceptible because of these 3 gunas. We can't even see our own Atman. How are we going to see Paramatman? People say, if there's God, show me God. I don't believe in God. We'll say, show me your own consciousness then. You know you're conscious, show me that. Before we start talking about supreme consciousness, you are conscious, right? You could say this. Someone says, "Oh, show me God." I'm a rationalist. That's how rationalism works. You make inferences from perceived realities. Okay, you want to see God. Well, how about we start with you show me your individual consciousness. Then we'll take it to the next level. How about we say that? That's not a bad little answer, isn't it? You can't even show our own consciousness. You can just, right? So, he's imperceptible because of these 3 gunas, but he's my Ishvara. This is Brahmā talking. He's my Ishtadevata. He's my Ishvara as well as the Ishvara of all others of Brahmana. So then I skipped a bit here and we jump. This, verse 30 now. And we still haven't got to the, I don't know why should we jump to the yoga? I think we should work through this and, and start to become more familiar with the Bhagavatam. The universe is situated in Bhagavan Narayana. And we'll encounter Vishnu with the lotus coming out of his navel in a few verses. In his repeating here, although he's beyond the gunas, the Prakriti, he utilizes his own Maya for the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the universe. His qualities are wondrous, amazing. It is under his appointment that I create the world, and it's under his control that Hara Shiva destroys it. So in the Vaishnava traditions, Shiva is Ishwar. It's not like it's different from Brahma because Shiva is eternal. Brahma's not. Brahma is a position like President of the United States, and then lasts for 8 years. So we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen after 8 years with our present president. But anyway, in principle, right, 8 years is a position, and then someone else fills that position. So Brahma is a position, and a different jiva fills that position every new cosmic cycle. Sham. When I'm sick, I drink this called the Brahmastra, which is the weapon in the Sham. Is that? Ah, sei tu. Tu sai fare il Brahmastra?
No, quello che...
Va bene, poi mi puoi fare, io sto in mezzo alla lezione. Acqua?
Acqua?
No, non abbiamo limone, vero? No, non
No.
abbiamo limone, dai. Vabbè, lascia perdere, non importa, non abbiamo limone.
Acqua, limone?
No, non lascia perdere. E zenzero grattugiato e turmeric. E turmeric sarebbe quello giallo, come si dice in italiano?
Ah,
Turmeric.
Curcuma.
Curcuma. Magari il negozio giù, perché io sto ammalando, attento tu, perché Sham e Sean mi hanno dato a me,
malati.
tutti malati.
Oh,
Stai attento, mettiti in una stanza, chiudi la porta perché
aspetta, ti vado a prendere l'ora di limone.
sì, se non si spiace. So, all right. I have my godson visiting with his friend, and he gave me the bug. Right, it's under. He controls Hara, right? That's Shiva. Shiva, and who destroys it. He, the controller of the three gunas, maintains it in the form of the great Purusha Vishnu. By the way, there's so many Vishnus, there's infinite Vishnus, all kinds of Vishnus, as is to be expected by the infinite being, manifests infinite forms. Thus I explained to you, O son, about that which you inquired. There is no existent, moving or non-moving, other than Bhagavan. Because I keep Hari, right? Everything moving or non-moving, that's just Chit and Achit. So you've heard of such Chit, Ananda, right? So Chit is all the Atmans. So let's not rush through this, because if we just read this, look, there is no existent moving or non-moving other than Bhagavan. We go on to the next one. What value is that? Right, there is no existent. What's that? Sat. Nothing that has sat. Moving or non-moving is chala achala. And what is the chala? That which has chit moves. Anything that has consciousness moves. Even a tree moves. It grows. It moves towards the sun. So that's chala is another way of thinking of chit art. All right. So that we know Satchit Ananda. So sat here is existent. Moving is just another way of is chala. Non-moving is not. It doesn't have chit. If there's a chit in something, they would say even a mountain has a chit. You just can't see it grow because it takes its lifespan is infinite. But it's an interesting idea that even a mountain has a controlling soul. The Jains take that even further than anybody's ever done. They say there's an Atman in every atom, but the Hindus wouldn't say that. I mean, the Vedic tradition would say that. The Jains do. Every atom has a jiva in it. It's kind of interesting. But anyway, chala achala, another way of saying chit achit, moving and non-moving. There's nothing. Everything's Bhagavan, because the moving is like a spark, and the non-moving is the Maya Shakti. Non-moving means Maya, which means Prakriti. Right? Because I keep Hari fixed in my heart with great intensity, my friends, this is bhakti. This text is a bhakti text. is teaching us about bhakti. All these stories, ultimately, their raison d'être is bhakti, nothing other than that. This is what bhakti is. Manmana bhavamad bhakto Gita. There's only one verse that is repeated twice, which is considered a flaw in literary exposition. Twice in the Gita. Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyat manmana bhavamat. Keep your mind fixed on me all the time. Repeated twice. So this is bhakti. But the Narada Bhakti Sutras defines bhakti as always thinking of Bhagavan, and then when you realize it, you forgot, the whole day's gone by, you didn't think of Bhagavan, then intense, what's the word he uses? Intense sorrow, not sorrow. Intense dismay might be a good word. Intense dismay when you realize, oh my God, I haven't thought of Bhagavan. It's 6 o'clock at night. I haven't thought of infant puja in the morning. I got to up my game. I got to up my game a little bit. So, so because I keep Brahma, I keep already fixing my heart with great intensity. My words have never proved to be false, my dear Narada. Nor has any falsity ever entered my mind. Satyam. There's no reason to say anything other than the Satyam. Nor have my senses ever fallen into unrighteous ways. Supreme tapas. He must have had a little something going on to take birth again from the last cycle, but almost nothing. But it shows you how it has to be 100% if we want to actually attain Bhagavan and attain the realms of Bhagavan. 34. Although I am the keeper of sacred law, right? The Vedas are uttered by Brahma at the beginning of creation, and then they come down and are transmitted through lineages. So he's the keeper of sacred law, means the Vedas. And although I am the embodiment of tapas, which we're going to see in a minute, and although I am honored as the lord of the progenitors, Prajapatis, in other words, I'm responsible for all the progeny, in other words, for the production of everything in the universe, forms. And although I'm immersed in the practice of yoga, okay, now we're getting ready to. We're approaching what we are interested, what we are going to focus on in the story of Brahma, and that's he's the first yogi, because most of us do some form of yoga. And although I have fully mastered that practice, yet I do not understand he from whom I myself am generated. Patanjali doesn't even try. He didn't even try. He just says, oh, Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara Pranidhana, Samadhi Siddhya. He just says, okay, he's omniscient, he's the guru of the ancients. he's not subject to kleshas and karma. He had like four verses. Then he quickly says, he comes as the sound Om Japa Tadartha Bhavanam. He didn't even try. he throws out a couple of things to explain who Vishnu is. Okay, now I offer homage right to his feet. Namaha, Namaha. They're all auspicious. His feet. It destroys samsara. It's just a sort of like a trope in bhakti theology. It's just a kind of standardized trope. You always say the feet, the feet, the feet, the feet, the feet. And the reason being, of course, that you absorb your mind in, there's no low or high with Bhagavan. But for us, the feet are the lowest part of our anatomy. And that's why, you take your shoes off. And if you're in a traditional, monastery, you wash your feet before you go in the temple or before you sit down to take prasad to eat. So the feet are considered the lowest part. So even though that doesn't apply to Vishnu, there is no lowest part. But still, in order just to sort of duplicate the honor we offer in this realm, we sort of project it inappropriately, perhaps you might say, onto Vishnu, and it's always the feet, the feet, the feet. I put my highest part onto the lowest part, but we should understand that it's kind of like, it's poetic. It's not that God really has a lowest part. It's not that Krishna's feet are any somehow lower than any other part of his anatomy. It's just that we're trying to maximize our respectfulness by duplicating what we do in this realm, and feet. Okay. Right, let's get going. Magari se fai un bel po', i ragazzi possono anche loro bere, perché loro adesso ritorneranno, saranno tutti raffreddati, volevano uscire, a quell'età lì che non si può fare niente. Okay, I'm honored. Okay, I don't understand Vishnu, says Brahma. I myself. And remember, he's not just the most intelligent person. His entire rupa, his entire body is made of intelligence. So even he cannot fathom the omnipotency of his own Maya. That God doesn't even, because God's infinite. So therefore, I mean, he's being a little bit rhetorical, but God's infinite and ever increasingly infinite. Even infinity is not static, nor is omniscience static, because all reality is infinitely, what would be the right word? It's infinitely expanding or infinitely being infinite. So, I think, he's sort of saying even God doesn't fathom the omnipotency of his own mind, just like the sky cannot understand its own limits, limitless. How do you understand limitlessness? There's no boundaries. To understand something, it has to have some boundary, and then it's contained, and then your mind can sort of wrap yourself around its containment, and you can focus on that contained entity, and you can understand it. But something has no boundaries. How can you fathom it? So I think it's being rhetorical here, but maybe not. Even God cannot fathom the omnipotency of his own Maya, because if by definition it's omni, it also is ever expansive, it's not static. So therefore you understand it and then expands, and you understand that and expands. So your understanding can't keep up with your own expansiveness. It's a kind of cool way of thinking about God that has some coherence to it. Just like the sky cannot understand its own limits. How can anyone else understand him? Says Brahma. Neither I, nor you, nor Shiva understands his real nature. What to speak of other celestials knowing it? We think we know God. We don't know anything. We make it an inference. And then those of us who are bhaktas, we know whatever is recorded when Bhagavan manifests. So we know the stories of Krishna, and the Shaivas know the stories of Shiva, but that's a grain of sand in the ocean of infinite wonders and presences and all of that. But we're happy. We got our little few, we got our Bhāgavata. I mean, we're happy with whatever that contains, but don't think that's just a drop in the bucket. Those of us whose intelligence is bewildered by his Maya perceive the composition of this world in accordance with our own perspective. We perceive this world, and what is this world, and why is this world, and all the big why questions according to our gunas. And those gunas limit our understanding. That's why those of us who understand that our understanding can never capture anything other than vague things like omnipotence. God must be omnipotent and omniscience. You're not going to get further than that unless God reveals it. That's why we accept revelation with all of the problems that we know, the problems of scriptural exegesis. We know the problems of hermeneutics. Of course, the academics, all they do is bang away at the problems. So we survive that because we know that somehow or other within that body of verbal, transmission that eventually gets written, we know that it's the only access we have. Even if there's conflict with one rendition versus another, and this one says that and that, and Christians ran into it. They started this whole thing off with the comparing the testaments. John says he's quite different from Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And so that was after the Enlightenment. that began the text critical study of the Bible. The Enlightenment was when reason, sort of displaced revelation as the highest form of knowledge, sometimes called the Age of Reason. So it's not that the Bible was thrown out, but it was subject to critical and that scrutiny. And when you scrutinize the Bible, it's full of contradictions between the accounts. Dates are wrong. I can't remember them. Was the tomb empty? Was it not? I mean, those kinds of things, right? One account says this, and they'll have different conflicting statements. So that started what we call the critical study of religion and revelation. And then, of course, once the Christians are doing that to their Bible, when they come to India, they're not going to start, accepting. They're going to do the same thing to the Indian texts. Of course they are. They did it to their own. You think they're going to go over to India and start worshiping Purāṇa Vishnu when they get off the boat? I don't think so. And so therefore, there are contradictions, and there are, things that, that clearly can't both be right. So what do you do? I mean, I don't know what you do. What do? I accept that, when things are handed down orally, the discrepancies emerge in different lineages. And so I look at the contradictions as human sort of channeling mechanisms, but you can spend your life looking at that and pointing out all the contradictions. How useful is that going to be at the moment of death? So having spent, it was when I first went to, I've been living years in India and ashram and all that. When I first started the PhD program, it was traumatic. It was traumatizing. There's even a book called How I Lost My Faith at Harvard. The book. How I lost, Harvard Divinity School. We're not talking about the Harvard Religion Department, which is secular. The Divinity School. There was a, devout Christian, he's going to go and get some intellectual training, and he goes off to Harvard, and he wrote a book. So you have to survive that somehow or other, and there are going to be things that are not resolvable. There's going to be definite conflicts within the scripture itself. That's what exegesis is, the word exegesis. And you have to try and iron them out. And if you can't, then you just say, look, what do I want? What do I want? If you want bhakti, you're willing to tolerate a certain amount of contradiction. If that's what you really want is bhakti, that's really what you're after, you're going to just throw your hands up and say, all right, there's a contradiction here, fine. Because what I want is that's not important for what my actual goal is. But if you want to bring a religion down, if you want to bring it down, you don't like it, you think a Brahminical construct, you take a Marxist lens, these Brahmins made it all up so they could keep power and keep the population in check. If that's what your agenda is, all you're about is finding contradictions. And a lot of the academic study religion revolves around that. So if your faith, if you're bhakti, if it's really bhakti that you want, you'll survive that. You keep going. And
we also have the discrepancy with the last story where only the gopi dared to, what was it, about giving the water of her feet?
Yeah, but we'll find the discrepancy between the two stories we are going to do together right now. You'll see a difference in the two accounts. Okay, so we will see that right. Just, we're reading the first account, then we move to chapter 3. There's a second account of Brahma's enlightenment. We'll see it right there. There's a difference. So do what you want with it. Me, I just enjoy them both. Right now. So we all see this composition of this world in accordance with our own perspectives. Is it pure consciousness? Is it gravity in subatomic particles? All of these possible ways of understanding metaphysics even. We all glorify the deeds of his avatars, but we do not understand him in truth, right? The Ram Bhaktas, they love Ram and, Hanuman, and they spend their lives just loving and Kirtan and Ram, Ram, Ram. But we don't understand him in truth. He is the original unborn Purusha. He's also Purusha, but the supreme Purusha. Every kalpa, he creates, right, cyclicality, cyclical creation. Every age, he creates, maintains, and destroys himself, within himself, through himself. Everything is Bhagavan. So then what is he doing? He's doing all this himself, within himself, because there's no outside of him. Everything is within him. And who's doing it all? Through himself. He's pure autonomous knowledge, not dependent on anything. We're not autonomous. We have to get our knowledge from outside. How do we know there's an Atman? How do we know there's a Bhagavan? Because we receive that information from outside. We read the sacred text. Even if you say, well, I'm going to sit Chitta Vritti Nirodha and I'm not going to take, I'm going to receive it from within. Yeah, but how do you know there's an Atman in the first place? You would get it from outside, then you go sit Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Right? So, pure autonomous knowledge. All of us are dependent on received knowledge. Even whether we receive it through our own senses, we're still receiving it through mechanisms that have been bestowed upon us by our karma. We're dependent, any kind of knowledge, even sense perception, we're dependent on pratyaksha, and pratyaksha is based on our karma, which gives us a particular set of perceiving instruments. There's no autonomousness there. He's the complete truth. Non-dual, but not in a Advaita sense, more in a Ramanuja, Vishishta, that everything is Bhagavan, so you could say that's non-dual, that's Advaita, but not the Advaita of Shankara. Within that Advaita, there's infinite variegatedness. Shankara does not allow not a single dualism, not one. And it's not Advaita anymore. This kind of Advaita is very different. Transcendent to the gunas, eternal, without beginning or end. All right. O sage, I just want to see, where does the yoga thing start? Okay, here it starts in the next one. I think we should finish this because, I think we should get a sense of some of the packing, the background, the framing of some of these stories. Right. Whereas the wise, whose mind, senses, and body are controlled, realize him, he becomes distorted by perverse argumentation and disappears. So when we start speculating, in fact, the Bhakti Sutra says a beautiful verse, Vada, disputation should not be relied upon. And why? Because there's infinite points of views. They're never, ever conclusive. You go and if you go to the philosophy department, you'll never find absolute truths. You get trained in critical thinking, but there are no absolutes either in philosophy or science. So if you're looking for absolutes, like is there a God, is there an Atman, the only way you can have any access to it is if it's revealed to you, because your own mind. Remember, what is the mind? It's samskaras. What is samskaras? Imprints from matter. You can't move beyond matter with reason. Reason is grounded in matter. Let's just be clear. There is a mind. It itself is just a container. Consciousness flows out of the senses through the mind into the world, and all of those sense perceptions are recorded in the form of samskaras. Now you have a mind with all these samskaras. Now, based on those samskaras, you make inferences. I keep talking about Big Bang. Universe is expanding. Why? Because we see the distance between the planets is increasing. That's based on sense perception. You then make an inference. Well, if it's expanding, then it's continually expanding. Well, it must have come from, if you go backwards, and then you end up with this point moment. These are inferences, all based on sense perception. The mind cannot, by its metaphysical makeup, cannot conceive of anything that it isn't grounded in matter. Inferences are grounded in matter. Is everybody clear about that? So if you are open to the possibility that there's something beyond matter, you have no access to it other than through revelation. Now, whether revelation is true or false, that's another thing. But if there is anything beyond matter, their mind cannot access it which means neither can philosophy or science. So then you have to make a decision. Are you willing to consider revelation or not? Well, a rationalist says, no, too many weird stories of 16-armed goddesses. No, I'm not signing off on any of that. Fine, but then forget about moksha. Then out, no moksha. Die. Then what? Maybe that's a way to frame it. Seriously. If there is a moksha, if there is anything else, you ain't going to get it from philosophy and science, my friend. So decide whether you want to take a leap, push your reason as far as you can push it. And then if you do think there's something else, at some point you make a rational leap. Using all the reason you have at your disposal, check out all of everything, Bhāgavatam, science, Buddha, check it all out. But don't keep checking it out forever. Because then you're going to die in the middle of checking it out. Then what? Your mind isn't fixed then, is it? Well, then when are you going to go? What does Krishna say in the Gita? Whatever your mind is fixed on at the moment of death, that's where you're going to go. Check it out for a year, 2 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. But at some point, make it. You got to take, if you feel somehow or other your samskaras feel this must be more than this, you have no access to it unless you take a leap of faith. Period. Push back if you want to. Right then, he becomes distorted by perverse argumentation, disappears. Why? Because what do we do when we use argument? We believe that our reason can conquer truth. That's arrogance, and that's the opposite of pranidhana, which is surrender. So Bhagavan disappears. You think you can figure it out? Bye. You're not going to get it with your reason, because reason is confined to Prakriti. Bye-bye. When you realize that, I'm always here. Krishna says, I'm always here in the Gita. No, I'm equal to everybody. But those who are dear to me, I'm dear to them. There's a verse. I'm equal to everybody, impartial. But those who surrender to me are dear to me. But anyone can surrender. So use your reason, be a materialist, be a rationalist. And at some point, hopefully, you'll have the humility to realize, I'm getting nowhere here, going around in circles. Plato, Kant, Schopenhauer, right? The whole list of, Western great thinkers. Did anybody capture truth? None of them. None of them had the last say. Now, okay. He becomes distorted by perverse argumentation, disappears. The first avatar of the Supreme is the Purusha. His time, nature. Okay, all right, we won't jump. His time, nature. He's repeating something we just read a few verses ago. The mind, cause, effect, material substance, evolution, prakriti. All right, all of that Sankhya stuff. The qualities of things, the tanmatras, the senses, the cosmic being, Virat. That's a sort of a meditation, actually. Let's not worry about it. He's self-luminous and the aggregate of all moving and non-moving. So he's basically saying, God is everything. I myself, says Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, Daksha, all the progenitors, right? All others such as yourself, Narada, the rulers of the celestial realms, the rulers of the realms of accomplished siddhas who travel through the ether, which is actually Narad, the rulers of the realm of mortals, right? Our king monarchs, as well as those of the lower realms, the Lord of the... And he lists all these realms. Yakshas, Rakshasas, serpents, and Naga, divine snakes. It's amazing cosmology in the Puranas that we can't see because of tamas, and we think there's just rocks out there. Karmically, our vision, we do not have the karma, and therefore our senses are the reflection of our karma, and our karma does not allow us to see a universe full of all kinds of dimensionalities. Just like I keep saying the same thing. The ant in this room doesn't realize it's in a room full of stuff. It doesn't realize it. Why? Karmically, his senses do not allow access to it. We're no different. Think about it. Do you think it's likely that only one planet has infinite forms and variety, and everything else is just rocks out there? How does that make sense? Right. So there's all these wonderful places, serpents, and all of them have devotees and traditions, and there's all kinds of yogic destinations, and there's a realm of serpents with beautiful, with beautiful jewels on their heads, and and a lot of the folklore of the ancient world, which we just dismiss as mythology or folklore, probably tapped into something or other. I mean, they would have been focused on some little tiny aspect of this infinite, wondrous universe. I don't think we can dismiss any anthropological model of the cosmos in human history. And we think if it's primitive, maybe it's a lot less primitive than our materialistic and very limited viewpoints. So let's move on right now. All of them, Gandharva, all these wonderful beings, and they're described, by the way, all these dimensions. If you're interested in the realm of the Yakshasas or the realm of the serpents, go to the 5th canto of the Bhāgavata Purāṇa. We're in book 2. Go to book 5. You can download it for free. Go to vedabase.com or probably loads of other places, and you can down and check out some of the universe with everything is totally animated, all kinds of realms with wonderful creatures. I mean, think of the wonderful creatures on our planet. They're discovering all the time weird creatures in the depth of the sea. And you say, wow, it's so crazy. Well, why, the whole universe is like that. And why wouldn't it be? So, that's the good thing about retiring. You couldn't talk like this in academia. They'd laugh you. They'd laugh if you went to an academic conference and did some of this. You retire, you don't care about anything anymore. Right now, so let's go, and all of them, right? So you check out the 5th canto, Naga divine snakes, the sages, the forefathers, the daityas, all of these are jatis. Patanjali would call them jatis, right? Species, types of embodied types, species. There's 84,000, which is exactly what science says, by the way, 84,000. So daityas, danavas, siddhas, and others who are the foremost, the pretas, evil beings, right? These are ghostly beings that have this sort of temporary ghost-like forms, right? Pishachas, ghost. Pishachas, they like to eat like awful things like mucus and blood and right? Kushmandas and no idea what they are. Large aquatics, deer, right, back to our realm, right? Large aquatics, deer, birds, in short, whatever in this world possesses supernormal qualities, bhagga. That's why you get Bhagavan. Bhagga is the quality. And Bhagavan is the one who possesses all qualities. We only have a few bhaggas. Then each of these wonderful species has some particular bhagga or quality that makes them very distinct. So they can swim, or they're huge, or they are, evil beings, or whatever. They have bhaggas. So the possessor of all bhaggas is Bhagavan. So remember that. Bhagga means quality. Greatness, potency, fortitude, strength, compassion. All beings have some exceptional quality. And different species have, feature different extraordinary qualities: beauty, modesty, power, intelligence, amazing color, right? Like, I don't know, Amazon little orange frogs, amazing, or peacocks, amazing color, form, or shapeless. There's shapeless things, I don't know what, but probably there are, like strings or something, string theory, is nothing other than the ultimate truth. O sage, the scriptures describe only the principal Leela avatars, only the principal incarnations. Leela means Bhagavan comes, to have fun, actually. The principal Leela, but not only that, it comes to, Krishna says in the Gita, to establish Dharma. Of the Purusha is the ground of all beings. I will narrate them to you. And a lot of the Bhagavatam is about the different avatars. Relish them, they're wonderful. And evaporate all the impurities of the air. All right, so even if we don't believe in planets of snakes with gems on them, the Bhagavatam says just listen to them. Stop trying to, just listen to them. They purify the mind, if nothing else. That's the process of the sadhana of bhakti yoga. It's listening. A major part of the sadhana of bhakti yoga is listening to these stories of the various incarnations in all different forms and species. So the Bhagavatam has, fraction. but it has 18,000 verses. Okay, so let's get to the yoga bit, and that's probably where we'll cut off. So Shuka says, right, we just have a few more verses, and then we get to the yoga bit. O king, no actual connection can exist between the objects of the world and the conscious transcendent soul. How, yeah, have you ever asked yourself how they're two categories of distinct things? Pure consciousness is the soul, and then Prakriti is inert stuff. So you can't. This is the Cartesian problem. Those of you who know about philosophy, what's the Cartesian problem? Descartes thought the mind was the soul. And what they call the Cartesian problem is how can one thing affect another thing if they're completely and utterly different? Matter can affect matter, right? So here's my hand is matter, and I can push my other hand. There can be contact between things of the same kind. So a material thing can cause an effect on another material thing. But something that's not material, how can it affect a material thing? That's the Cartesian problem. It's categorically distinct. And therefore, and Sankhya resolves that by saying, well, the mind is prakritic, but Descartes had a problem with it because he thought the mind was the soul. So now you have a soul. How does a soul affect matter? Sankhya would say, no, well, actually, the soul doesn't affect matter. It's just a witness. The mind is affecting matter. So Sankhya bypasses the classical Cartesian problem, which gets imported into Christianity. Has anybody heard of the Cartesian problem? All right, look it up. It was a major blow in Western philosophy to the idea that there's a soul, a non-material soul. For some philosophers, it was the deathbed. It was the death call of any notion of a soul was the Cartesian problem. And so any modern philosopher who's a theist has to have a position that resolves the so-called Cartesian problem. It's a major thing for anyone believing in an Atman. But as I say, Vedanta doesn't have that problem, because they're not saying the soul is the soul that's one that's pushing matter and making things move. It's the mind. But that's a discussion for another day. Yeah, grazie. Oh, hai messo miele?
Io lo devo mettere.
Metti un bel cucchiaio di... Grazie, Prabhu. Okay, so we're almost there. It is only because of Maya, right? There has to be some divine explanation for it, of how can the soul be affected by matter. So it's Maya, right? And Krishna says, Devi, it's divine. Didn't in the Gita, Devi hi esha guna mai mama maya. This Maya of the gunas, it's divine. It doesn't operate under the normal principles of contact and so forth. Contact meaning, how do you move something? Through contact. Something contacts something, it moves it. This is metaphysics. Okay. The Atman appears to have many forms, right? Now I'm a man, now I'm a woman, now I'm a dog, now I'm a cat. Appears to have many forms by dint of Maya, assuming many forms. These forms of Maya. C'è la sprematore lì giù,
Ok.
se vuoi. Quello che sprema. Grazie. Right? Right? Where are we? Enjoying itself in the gunas of Maya. What is enjoyment? Bhoga. What does Patanjali say? A bhoga apavarga. Remember the verse 218? Why? Right? What is the seer and the seen? What is the seer? The three gunas. I mean, sorry, what's the scene? The three gunas. And instead of calling it Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, he calls it, I forget, three other names, right? 218. And what else is it? Well, it's nothing other than the objects of perception and the instruments through which we perceive it. That's Prakriti. So you can think of Prakriti metaphysically as the three gunas. You can think of it kind of functionally as the objects of the senses and the instruments through which we see them. And then he says, why is it there? Bhoga apavarga. To enjoy or to gain liberation. Bhoga, and here's the same word, bhoga. You've all heard of it, bhoga yoga. So here we have it. What is Maya? Down here, right? So the Atman appears to have many forms by dint of Maya, assuming many forms, enjoying itself in the gunas of Maya. That's Bhoga. It thinks, I am, aham. We just had the discussion about it. Aham kara, aham asmi, asmi. And this belongs to me. Mama, aham iti, aham mameti, aham mama iti. This is nothing other than the second klesha of Patanjali. When, on the other hand, its illusion is dissipated, and the soul revels in its own magnificence, which is transcendent to time and Maya, Svarupa, Nirbija Samadhi, all of those things we've heard about. It is then able to renounce both time and Maya and exist in its own autonomy. Time is nothing other than the movement of Maya, of Prakriti. That's what time is, movement of Prakriti. Grazie. Right, now we start, worship by Brahma's sincere vows. Bhagavan, the second story is much fuller and richer, by the way, but this one comes first, so we're doing it first. Bhagavan revealed his form to him. So Brahma was doing Chitta-vritti not just to realize his own Atman, but he wanted to realize, who's this Ishvara? And we'll pick up here next week, okay? He then imparted divine truth to him so as to remove all doubts about the reality of his Atman. Okay, now we actually start the yoga part, right? Brahma, the first of the celestial gods, foremost teacher of the world, sat on his seat, right, with the desire to create, reflected on how he might do so, but he could not figure out, and so on. And then the story will continue. We'll pick that up next week. And now he's actually going to do something that looks like this, the limbs of yoga, which is why the tradition considers him the first yogi. And then we'll read the second story, which is much richer in details about the actual yoga practice itself, when we finish the first one. So I think it's a good place, 8:54. It's a good place to see if there's any questions, my friends. By the way, don't expect me to read the chats. I can't read the chats when
What
yeah.
adokshaja means?
A what? Adhokshaja.
Yeah.
Adhokshaja. I have to look it up. We'll look it up, Monia Williams. Look it up.
I look it up and it doesn't explain. It just separates it like adok, ksha, ja.
Well, Ja is born, and Adho it should be something like over, above, higher. Adho, and then Ksha. I wonder if that's Aksha, beyond sense perception. I don't know.
Okay.
I'll look it up, but right now I'm going to guess because Aksha, like Prati-aksha through the eye. So
There you have.
So therefore, ati, that which is beyond beyond the perception of the senses. I'm going to say something like that just for now, and then we can follow up on that. Okay.
It can mean possibly like adho, as you said, below, down, shaja, from kshi to perish, beyond perishable, that which is not subject to perishing, something like this, maybe. I don't know.
Well, that sounds
yeah.
Okay. That sounds very that sounds likely. That sounds like so it's kshi, which means to perish, to make thin, and all of that kshina. Okay. Yes. So he's born. Wait. Okay, Adho Aksha. In other words, he doesn't deteriorate. He's eternal.
Yeah, something like this.
Where are you? Right? Federico? What are you looking at for that?
No.
Oh,
I'm just thinking that maybe I'm not looking up anything, but well.
No, let's follow it up. Wait. Okay. How many superstars do we have here? Federico. Who else? Oh, we got some superstar Sanskritists. If you want to, if you don't mind doing that saver, Federico, we're very much obliged. Let us know. Let us know, Federico, not tu, l'altro. Oh, ma tu ancora un paio di mesi prima che diventi un superstar. We got two Federicos.
I know.
Okay, yeah, please. Anybody want to follow up on that? They could be that there's two possibilities, by the way. that there, it could be both, ad hoc Sajjā. I think that the Federico one sounds better, not subject to deterioration, as opposed to that who is beyond born. It doesn't really fit in with the jar part of it, beyond sense perception.
Somebody, the chat.
The next
Or-
question. Let's let that dangle and let our superstars deal with it, and then we'll find the answer. Well, they'll bring us perhaps the answer next week. Any other questions, my friends? So then do we want to, Jessica? Do you want to?
Edwin, it's Isabel. It's Rosanna and Isabel. And when you say next week, do you mean in 2 weeks?
I do.
or-
Yeah. Beg your pardon.
Okay.
Yeah. Next week is Sanskrit. Don't turn your back on Sanskrit. We
I'm
had.
trying to.
We've had, I don't know, there's at least 34 people live, 30 people live, and I have no way of knowing how many are downloading it. What does that mean? It means people just like you and I are doing it. They're not telling themselves the story that they can't do it. So don't tell yourself that story. Doesn't matter. Just it's your mind, just making nonsense up. I mean, people never thought they could do it, and then they're doing. Federico, you said you never thought for a minute you could do it, and there you are, halfway through Goldman. Tell us about it. Yes, is that true?
Yeah, sure. Yep.
No, l'altro Federico.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Is it? Isn't it? I remember you saying you never do it. I don't forget, right?
Yeah, I saw all these Sanskrit words and it looked like a nice the draw, you know what I mean? And then now I can translate it and read it, so it's fun. It's fun.
So please, my friends, if you're in this for life, what else are you going to do for life? Everything else is going to fall away. So Sanskrit will also fall away, but at least that's going to help you enter quite deeply into the sacred text, which is our only way to get access to that which lies beyond. Okay, any questions, my friends? Jai Sri Radhe.
Radhe Jai.
Ram.